Where nothing disappeared, anything that ever was, the building, the cabin, the slave quarters groaning beneath development, the burial ground mourned its death, suffering the indignity of erasure as silent ashes cast into the wind. Rising with the rise in time is an anecdote for green fields and barbed wire fences where the clocks rest, with sparrows on lines watching the cars drive past trying to make themselves heard. Plugged in, the power concentrates like shock waveform islands of concentric time. Gravity waves surfing space-time at light speed, wearing concrete piers away with thousands of years of water surging before tempests, forgotten like every dawn of history. Where nothing disappeared, each idea formed still exists in the mind of God, with every soul and thought of lifetimes traveling through structures of being and becoming, passing on. The following is an essay from 15 July 2013, Global Plutocratic Peloton Lap to American Spectators. And I should say, because this is now March 2015, that regarding the presidential election, the lawyers in the contest seem to be servo units of the global corporatist system that has developed from networks that have kind of surpassed American individualism. And then there's Donald Trump. He is rich. Yet he seems to represent American individualist tendencies or history that still continue. Although this is a certain criticism of the plutocracy, the concentration of wealth, and the concentration of power, which I think about more today, that has replaced the blessing of the United States with few people and a lot of intelligent individuals that existed when America formed and made it a great nation. A lot of natural resources, few people, a lot of opportunity, and the absence of concentrated wealth and power. And today people instead tend to put their faith in concentrated wealth and power as if it was just capitalism and American history and greatness, and actually it's not. It's the oldest thing in the world that's existed from Pharaonic Egypt to Louis XVI's France. Global Plutocratic Peloton Lap to American Spectators, 15 July 2013. Rolling through the global countryside is an economic peloton of elitists on financial steroids of deregulation, packed with performance-enhancing media and government sycophants. Spectators watch the race on HDTV when they aren't thinking about themselves as just meat. They should develop their minds, even if housed in a meaty clump of atoms, as a mind-over-matter kind of resistance to fate. Two American competitors in the race have as much wealth as 110 million American citizens, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett. Did Bill Gates do as much work as 55 million men and women to get such a big pile? Is it the comfort he can afford that matters, or is it the political power and opportunity cost to the poor to invent and produce because all of that capital is concentrated? The extremely rich are not necessarily bad, though some could be latent Hitlers. IBM provided the Nazi death camp computing punch card machine expertise. Prescott Bush was censured for trading with the Nazis by the U.S. Senate during the Second World War. Who can say that those in pursuit of wealth wouldn't do? The plutonomy today is a phenomenality choking off the American experiment in democracy of the founders. Large banks and corrupt Wall Street trading methods enabled since the first Clinton administration brought about the 2008 economic collapse were rewarded by federal financial resurrection with new performance-enhancing financing. The Federal Reserve issued quantitative easing of their financial distress. A separate and extremely unequal Wall Street economy split off from the U.S. economy of the citizens without possibility of renormalization. It joined with a global economy of actors of concentrated wealth, the faces of the rich around the world in a new economic nation loyal unto themselves. They are the plutonymous riders of the lavender sage. The plutonomy is the consequence of high-tech networking and masses co-opted into a corporatist social environment. The affirmative action era allowed a perfect screening out of egalitarian controls on the distribution of wealth, allowing the plutonomy to swell. While traditional values were overturned amidst the social redistribution of political power, the political powers themselves were overturned, enabling deregulation of financial controls and reduction of taxation entirely in benefit of the nascent American wing of global plutonomy. Concerned simply with race and gender class advantages relative to white males, the affirmative action classes were weak Economic warriors readily giving up economic balances that were formerly the province of traditional American society, with middle-class and working-class white male leadership generally restraining the difference between the rich and the middle class and the poor. The affirmative action classes failed to develop any sort of balanced relationship among the new and reformed populist egalitarianism and the rich. Instead, they let the entire people of the United States sink to a natural mass inferiority to concentrated wealth, as 20% of the people had 85% of the wealth and 1% of the people had 30%. And in America today, 10% of the people have 90% of the income. The affirmative action class just wanted to be in the top government jobs without any idea of what to do when they got there besides flirt with the rich. The U.S. Congress' failure at competence is a kind of economic elephant described by blind men and women and transgendered analysts these days as an enigmatic theory. With such an expensive price on winning a Senate seat, about $8 million, how can those guys, gals, and transgendered, mostly human, and only a little cyborg, preponderantly heterosexual fans of the plutonomy do such a terrible job at the service of the economy of Americans, but such a fine job at service for the economy of the plutonomy? The answer is simple. If they don't service the political interests of the plutonomy, politicians and media are history. It isn't just that politicians and media are all bought and paid for tools of the plutonomy. For many, the facts are beyond their intellectual pay grade. They're happy in a pile of political manure and don't stick their heads out. A higher rate of taxation on the rich should occur with holistic planning to reform the U.S. economy to an ecologically sustainable foundation. Limiting the number of people a corporation could employ at 5,000 would help break up Wall Street power. So would it cap the number of corporations an investor to buy into per decade at 3. The tax rate on concentrated wealth should be 90%, and the tax should pay off the public debt ASAP. If wealth flees abroad, good Americans would be better off reforming the economy and restarting with good political reforms directed by competent reformers and ecological economists. Political reform in America is improbable. The media is owned by plutocrats. Politicians are sycophants of plutonomy. The environment and ecosphere decline under the system of global plutonomy as the Wall Street and global elitists cannot transition to a new ecological, economic, or nationalist structure. Neither can they allow local political developments independent from the Wall Street hostile takeover of anything unprofitable for the power of plutonomy. What I find interesting is the role that godless atheist evolution plays in reinforcing the interests of plutonomy. Scientific elites develop life extension medical goodies for the financial elites that appear not too affordable for the masses. Living forever as a member of an elite plutonomy might be good subjectively, at least for a few hundred years. However, with a global population of 7 billion moving quickly upward to 10 billion, the prospect of increased consumerism with decreased natural resources seem ominous. Life extension and medical costs are practical demographically for plutonomy aren't so for 10 billion souls. Medical experimentation with genetics and life extension, cyborgs, and abortion have required a developing a moral elitist core one might approximate is based in Boston's Harvard and MIT, like a few other ad hoc unifications of organization uniting wealth, power, and research. Boston's is brutal to the interests of the out of work without hope of a good lifestyle in the USA. Concentrated wealth in plutocracy creates a demand for advanced medical procedures unaffordable to the masses, who in turn demand the advanced medical procedures. That drives up the cost of medicine, and insurance companies raise the rates to cover it. Supporters of Obamacare may believe that the rich own the companies and can bite the cost, yet corporations are also firewalls insulating the wealth of the rich from that sort of thing. The rich can shift assets to medical supplies and for-profit hospital procedures to keep their profits up. Medical cost increase will be used to pay for increasing public medical costs. A better for better medical coverage than the Obamacare pyramid scheme that defies demographics and that includes Medicare coverage for aging seniors that will almost all demand the life extension best medical procedures if possible would be a more egalitarian distribution of wealth whereby all Americans advance together, more or less. With public debt to finance future medical care unsustainable, consider the facts of supply and demand with concentrated wealth and a profusion of expensive advanced medical procedures being developed. Of course, it is possible that mass production, such as $2 MP3 players made in China, could roll into medical technology and provide a lot of cheap medical services, importing items made in China, or if the United States continues with the decrease of wages for ordinary people, perhaps made in America, the lowest because of cheap labor. For it is possible to follow a different main line of medical development than the current economic line of stimulation. Just as in chess strategy, there are innumerable variations from the main line to experiment with. Investors will develop products if there is demand. Fewer investors will develop products that are unaffordable to all, so that no demand exists for the product. If wealth is directly capped through reduction of the size of corporations and a limit is placed on the number of corporations anyone can invest in, at 3, with a progressive taxation, then investors and medical developers will create products affordable to the masses. Systems analysis is probably a factor in directed invention and product development, with a basic paradigm for making the product with the best sales and profit potential. It is worth noting that simple redistribution of wealth is ineffective without also fundamentally reforming the existing economic structure through legislation. And different value theories should be developed too, such that no one should be entitled to earn more than 300 times annually that of the poorest members of society, because the ability to have enough money to buy hamburgers, enough for several million lifetimes, and doing what everyone can simply to concentrate wealth to be able to buy so much more than one needs, is simply ineffective with limited natural resources to do so. It should be that new value theories could be developed that would find it rewarding for people to have a certain amount of material compensation, but find more satisfaction in perhaps developing new materialist technologies or social technologies. It could be that finding lowest screening businesses for low business prospects for lowest entropy added to produce the most good for the most people would be a thing that could be zoned and area under the review of government regulation selection, such that not all business ventures would be allowed to go forward. Yet they would, all that went forward, be free enterprise rather than socialism. Too many have no concept of economic reform of capitalism that remains capitalism, and instead advocate for the difficulty to defend state ownership of enterprise, and on an ad hoc advancement of gross biological technology capable of morphing biological structures infinitely in all directions. Imagine experimenting with brain size, tweaking pig brains with human genes for xenotransplantation as applications through the data for life extension of plutocrats, and obviously is a backdoor for class biological war or social controls. If certain of the advantaged upper classes could actually be able to renew their bodies, act like pigs morally and gluttonously, I suppose, and eat as much hedonistically fulfilling themselves as possible, and just replace body parts cheaply, it might deform their moral values. Especially if populism is a political tool for mass acquiescence in the concentration of wealth, the masses themselves will continue voting for the interests of plutonomy that may ergonomically require the decline of mass being for itself. At a certain stage, the plutonomy would be better off without billions of consumers in several theoretical models of dystopia.